What's going on, everybody? So currently we're sitting in my 2000 Grand Cherokee. It's had a check engine light since I put it back together. The thing needs to go through Connecticut state emissions, so we got to figure out what this check engine light is. Now, there are a couple different ways that we can check to see what this check engine light is. With most Chrysler vehicles and most Jeeps, there is a way that you can actually read out the codes in these vehicles without actually having a code scanner. So the first thing I want to do is to show you guys that don't have a code scanner how you can actually retrieve the codes in your Jeep. Now, I know this works in Wranglers from 97 to whenever, 2006. I know that it works in Grand Cherokees all the way up to 2004. I'm not sure about the newer Chrysler vehicles, but even some of the older 90s Chryslers did the same thing. So here's what we're going to do. Now, you guys can all see the display right there. Let's see if we could zoom in on that for you a little bit. There we go. So now what we're going to do is the key is currently in the on position, so we're going to turn it off. So with the key off, what you want to do is go key on, key off, key on, key off, key on. And there's your code, P0155. Now, you look up that code, and when you look up that code, ooh, holy, zoomed in. Okay, when you look up that code on the interwebs, it states that it is an O2 sensor heater problem, bank 2, sensor number 1. So what we want to do now is we want to verify using our scan tool that we have to ensure that the code that we got in the dash is the code that is actually showing up in the ECU. So what we went ahead and did was we scanned it, read the codes. Let's see if it'll auto. There we go. And there you go. P0155, bank 2, sensor 1, heater failure. So now what we need to do is we need to troubleshoot why this heater is failing. Now, most times when you get an O2 sensor heater failure, all you're going to do is slap an O2 sensor in it. They're relatively inexpensive depending on the vehicle. Some Toyotas and Subarus are well over $300, but the O2 sensor for this one is about $41, so it's not too terrible. Now, I already went ahead and picked up a sensor just to have in case the sensor is bad, but I have a sneaking suspicion that there's more to it than just a bad sensor. And the reason I say that is when you have an O2 sensor heater failure, 9 times out of 10, it'll be an intermittent problem. Your check engine light will come on, it will go off, it'll come on, it'll go off, and vice versa. So what we need to do with this is we need to check the wiring. These sensors on this particular vehicle are very hard to get to. They're a pain in the butt to get out. This vehicle is almost 20 years old, so I can only imagine that these things are rusted in place. So we're going to test these things out. We're going to go through what it takes to diagnose an O2 sensor, how we can diagnose the heater, how we can diagnose the wiring in the vehicle, and then we're going to go from there. So the first thing we're going to do is I'm going to take you guys under the hood. We're going to unplug the sensor from its connector because it is accessible. And once we get that sensor unplugged, we are going to actually test the heater circuit of the sensor. So let's go do that now. Alright guys, so right in the middle of your screen there is the connector for bank 2, sensor 1. It is right here. So now what we're going to do, I don't know how well you're going to be able to see this with my hand in the way, but we've got 2 white wires, and actually, you know what, let me see if I can get this out of your way. Yep. Okay, you should be able to see that better. Now what we're going to look at, and we'll get the sensor view, is there are 2 white wires down here, and let me make sure that you guys can see that. Yeah, you can. You've got 2 white wires, a black wire, and a gray wire. Now, 9 times out of 10, and I know I say that a lot, but it is the truth, 9 times out of 10, on the sensor side, your 2 white wires are going to be your heater wires. So now what we're going to do is we're going to unplug the sensor, and then we're going to use our trusty voltmeter, and we'll see if we can get that in frame for you as well. Alright, so what we're going to be looking for, and you're going to love the way that I probe this, but kind of all I have right now. what we're going to be looking for is some form of ohm reading. Now, I haven't actually looked up what the reading should be for this particular sensor heater, but typically they're anywhere from 3 to 10 ohms. So let's get this unplugged. And this harness right here is the O2 sensor harness. And I don't know if you can tell, but you hear that crispy crackly? This is the vehicle side of the harness, and these wires are all toasted and melted and all kinds of stuff. So I'll guarantee you guys that's where the problem is. But let's take these 2 white wires. We're going to probe them inside the connector. We'll see what the reading is on the meter. The meter is set to ohms right now. So we'll probe that side, and we'll pull this. And look at that, we're running 5.2 ohms. I really hope you guys can see that. 5.3 ohms. So our O2 sensor is good. The heater is good. 5.2 ohms is right where we're supposed to be. So now what we're going to have to do is we are going to have to take the vehicle side of the sensor right here, or the vehicle side of the harness, and we are going to have to test the heater operation. Now with the scan tool that I have, we can actually manipulate the oxygen sensors. We can manipulate the heaters to turn on so that we can see if there's actually power being distributed to that particular sensor. So what I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to turn this off. I'll probe these wires up. We'll go grab the scan tool. We will activate the O2 sensor heater and see if we're getting power at the connector. Alright guys, so we got it probed. You can see the 2 probes that are running right down in there. We got our voltmeter set up, and now what we're going to do is take our scan tool, and hopefully it'll focus on this guy for you. Alright, so what we're going to do now is we're going to scroll down until we find our O2 heater test. We're going to hit that, and it's going to actuate the test. And what we want to hopefully see is a voltage. And we currently have nothing. 0 O2 sensor heater voltage. So I guarantee you that we have a bad wire in the harness. So we are going to correct that. Let's just do one more quick test to make sure. Yep, we are showing 0 voltage. Now, one of the things that we're going to want to do here is we're going to want to look up a wiring diagram or a fuse for this particular guy. So what we can do... Alright, so we're going to log into ProDemand. And actually, let me tip the camera down a little bit more so we'll make this easier for you and me. There we go. Log into ProDemand, and what we're going to do is we're going to go wiring diagrams, system wiring diagrams, then we're going to go to engine performance, 4 liter, and then on this whole gaggle of stuff here, we're going to try to find the O2 sensor wiring. We should be able to see the O2 sensors somewhere. There's all the fuel injectors. We got some relays, we got engine coolant. What we're looking for is the oxygen sensor heater circuits. Oxygen sensor right there. Alright, so we're going to view that. We'll blow it up and we'll see what we can find. So the heater circuit is going to be looks like, let's see what colors they are in the car. violet, white, and black, maybe. Bank 2 sensor 1, violet, white, and black. Alright, so this is the sensor we're looking at right here. The heater wires are violet, white, and black. So what we're going to do is we're going to follow the violet, white. And that violet, white should go back to the ECU. Or hot at all times. O2 sensor heater relay. Now, being that this heater circuit goes back to the relay, and this relay also feeds all of our other O2 heater circuits. So this relay here actually supplies our upstream sensors. This one supplies our downstream sensors. Our downstreams are just fine, and our bank 1 sensor 1 is just fine, so we know that this relay is supplying heater power. And being that they're basically run off of the same, which again, this purple wire goes down, and you'll see that it'll also feed the heater side of bank 1 sensor 1. So we know it's getting power. So now what we need to do is we need to not worry about a fuse, because it's obviously not a fuse, because we're getting power to the other oxygen sensor, and knowing that these heater circuits are both tied together, we don't need to check for fuses. So now the only thing left to do is we are going to have to go that way, and we're going to cut the wires or peel the wires apart, see what's broken, see what looks like crap, and fix that. So I'm going to reposition everything. I'll tear this wiring loom apart and bring you guys back and show you what the wiring looks like. Alright guys, so we tested all of the heater wires. We separated them all. I don't know how well you're going to be able to see. I gotta get a better lens. But you can see that some of those wires have a little bit of chafing on them, a little bit bare, and they may have been shorting out. So we're going to tape those up because I've tested all of the heater wires back over to the fuse panel, the relay panel over there on the other side of the battery, and everything tested good for that one. And everything tested good for bank 1 sensor 1 as well. So we're going to get those taped up, and then I'm going to explain something a little strange to you guys, so stick around. Alright, so here's where we're at. This is where the weirdness comes into play. Now, this is where it helps to have multiple $5,000 bidirectional scanners available, but I only have one. Now, I can do a manual actuation of the downstream O2 heaters, but I can't actuate the upstream O2 heaters, which is really odd. So we went through, tested the wires end to end, everything is perfect. Only thing that it could have been, from what I can tell with what the equipment that I have, is that the heaters were shorting out and immediately shutting everything down, which doesn't make any sense to me. And the reason being is that both upstream sensors are powered from the same relay. So if one is shorting out, then the other one is shorting out. And what doesn't make sense is that it was only throwing a code for bank 2 sensor 1 and not bank 1 sensor 1, even though they are on the same power line. So I got to do some research on this, because it's very possible that the ECU will shut down activation of those heater circuits for the upstream O2 sensors when the engine reaches a certain temperature, or when the exhaust gases reach a certain temperature. It may shut that whole system down, so I might not be able to actuate those because the O2 sensors are too warm. So we're going to have to let this thing cool down completely and then see if the code comes back. I mean, we taped up the wires. We got everything good, tested everything end to end, so there's only one of two things that it could be from this point. Is one is a bad wire between the ECU and the bank 1, bank 2 sensor 1 O2 relay, or a bad ECU. So those are the only two things that it could be. So if that code comes back again, then we're going to have to test from the ECU to the O2 sensor heater relay and pray that we find a bad wire, because if it's not a bad wire between those two, then it is going to be the ECU. Now, very interesting, very weird. I'm going to look up some wiring diagrams and figure out what's going on with it, but for now there's no codes. The codes are not coming back. The ECU does monitor that particular relay, and it is showing that it's there when I pull it out. So it does realize the relay is gone. So it is sensing the relay, which makes me think that there is no bad wire. It's just something really strange. But I'll probably bring you guys back in another video and let you know. Anywho, that is the stuff that you can get into when you start replacing oxygen sensors. I know it's a real long-winded video, and I apologize for that, but I wanted you guys to see, and I knew this one was going to be a little goofy, so that's kind of why I put it in there, was I wanted you guys to see that even though you have a check engine light for a bad oxygen sensor, it's not always going to be a bad oxygen sensor. In this case, our oxygen sensor is totally fine. It reads totally fine. The heater circuit has the proper amount of resistance. The O2 sensor is not bad. We could have thrown an O2 sensor in this thing in 10 minutes, spent 50 bucks, and still had the exact same problem. Now, we may still have the same problem, but it's not O2 sensor related. We are able to actually take the O2 sensor out of the equation and work our way backwards. So when you have an O2 sensor code, it does help to do a little bit of extra research. So I'm going to go do some research now and see what I find, and we may or may not end the video right here, and I may add some stuff in. Alright, so just like I thought, the ECU does weird stuff when it's monitoring that particular heater. Heat oxygen sensor circuit is monitored with the engine at idle for at least 12 seconds after a cold start. Battery voltage is more than 9 volts. Here's the important part. Engine coolant temperature is less than 147 degrees Fahrenheit, and the ambient battery temperature is within 27 degrees plus or minus of the engine coolant temp. So basically our ambient temperature, our battery temperature, and our engine coolant temperature all need to be within 27 degrees of one another, and all have to be below 147 degrees. So basically this thing's not going to monitor this until the vehicle has been sitting outside all night and it's cold. So we're not going to get to see what's going on with this thing and if we fixed it until we actually let it cool off, set it overnight, restart it tomorrow morning, and see what happens. So after doing the research, excuse me, and a lot of it, what it appears is that this particular ECU, because the vehicle is older, does not actually monitor the heater circuit of the oxygen sensor. What it monitors is the responsiveness of the oxygen sensor. So when you first start the vehicle, everything is cold and all the criteria is met for the heater to run. The heater, it should run and should heat the oxygen sensor up so that the oxygen sensor begins to respond quicker. Now, the criteria for these codes being set is that the oxygen sensor remains above 3 volts for more than 30 to 90 seconds. So if the oxygen sensor is not responding to fueling changes within 30 to 90 seconds, it will throw a code assuming that the heater is bad. So the only way we're going to know if this oxygen sensor is truly defective is we're going to have to start the vehicle dead cold, excuse me, and monitor bank 2, oxygen sensor 1, to see how long it takes that sensor to begin responding to fueling changes. Now, just because the heater is good doesn't mean that the actual reporting side of that oxygen sensor is good. So if that sensor is lazy, that's going to cause that code to trip, which would make sense as to why every time it's cold outside, this thing does that. So that sensor could potentially still be lazy. So what we're going to do is we're going to take it home tonight, let it cool off. I'll bring my scanner home with me. We'll scan it. We'll see what the responsiveness of that particular sensor looks like. And, yeah, we'll go from there. But either way, we have a sensor to replace it if we need to. So, here goes nothing. Alright guys, so I hope you enjoyed that video. I know it's a little different from what we're normally doing, but I just wanted to give you some more of the troubleshooting electrical stuff. So, if you enjoyed it, hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, hit the little bell. Make sure you guys are watching these videos. I love making them, and I love the comments I get on everything. So thank you, and we'll see you on the next one.
Yeah.